My name is James Graves, and welcome to another edition of Night Journey. Sitting across me is a fine trumpeter, and his album that he has out, we've been playing the heck out of it, called Standard Barrier. But Wallace Roney, how you doing?
I'm okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time out to visit with us. Let's take it back. Like I said before, I don't know that much about you. I had the opportunity of seeing you last year at Blue Note in New York. And I said, damn, he's jamming. And I've seen your name around on a couple of albums, but as you told me just before we went on like that, this is your third album, Standard Barrier. Well, let's take it back for you. Why don't you give us a little history of how you got started?
Okay, I'm from Philadelphia. My father was a boxer. He also liked to play trumpet. And first things I remember was the records he used to play, Miles, Art Blakey, Horace Silver, and that's all he did around the house. And he had friends. That time in Philadelphia was a very strong jazz community. And they'd work hard all week, and on Fridays and Saturdays they'd party. And the way they partied was Philadelphians had a sandwich called hoagies, or steak and cheese and hoagies. They'd bring their hoagies over to my father's place, and they'd hang out, and they put on. My father was a trumpet man, so he had all the Miles Davis records. His friend Rob Ahmed, who I called Uncle Rob, he had all the Coltrane records. Another guy had all the Art Blakey records. So they said, well, you have the latest Miles record? Yeah, so everybody come over to my father's place, and they listen to the Miles records. Or if Rob had the latest Coltrane, he'd bring it over to my father's place, and they'd bring out their hoagies, and they just have a good time. And that's the music I heard, and I saw my father play trumpet, and I just looked up at him, and that's what I wanted to do. It was just natural. And that's like when I was 1 year old or even earlier. That's the first thing I can remember. So that's how I got into it. I begged my father to let me play his trumpet. He paid so much money for that trumpet, he wouldn't let me touch it. And his way of saying, well, I told him I wanted to play. He said, well, only way I'll get you a trumpet is if you can blow my trumpet. But I could never pick up his trumpet to try. So it was a catch-22 thing. But when he used to go out, my mother used to sneak and let me play his trumpet. So one day, he came back home, and after me been trying for a long time, he came home. My mother said, Wally, I got a surprise for you. And he said, what? You know, he was mean, dude. He said, what? And she went, and she took out his trumpet, and he looked at her like, what you doing? And she pulled out the trumpet and gave it to me, and he just held on. And I said, Bob! And he looked at me and said, oh, no, I got to buy him a trumpet. So that's how that started.
So ever since the day that you can remember, it's been jazz.
Yeah.
What is it about jazz that you like?
Well, when you're young, you don't know what it is about it that you like. You just like it. The music. That's why I'm going to sidetrack myself for a second, then I'm going to go back to it. That's why I love this music, and I believe that people should try to, or parents or society, whatever you want to call it, should try to instill upon their kids high forms of music. Because, when they're kids, they don't know. They just know good music. So, it could be the most complicated music in the world, and if it's good, they're going to dig it. And what that does is help elevate your mind.
Exactly.
So they don't know it then, but, then you come to find out later how great this thing is, and it can help you you don't even have to be a musician. It helps you in school because to listen to jazz, other than listening to what I would say social or pop music, you got to listen to the bass interplay with the drums, with the piano, with the trumpet, with the saxophone, whatever. It's not like you just listen to one thing. The trumpet's playing something, then you got to dig with the bass players playing underneath, and then you got to dig how the drummer responds, all within that one note, and then you go into the next note. That takes a lot of intellect, It takes a lot of it's a great music, So initially, I didn't know. I just liked that music, and then as I began to study music, I realized how intricate the music was that I loved, because my friends, I grew up with, kids my age, and I had a healthy childhood, and they all liked R&B, which is fine. My sister loved R&B. She was a Motown groupie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were up the street from the Uptown Theater, so I heard all the music. But it got to be kind of funny that my friends could go out and buy a Fender Stratocaster, never took a lesson in their life, and could play Purple Haze, Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze. It was nothing. But they couldn't pick up an acoustic bass and play Agitation, or pick up a trumpet and play, even play the melody to something like Someday My Prince Will Come. You had to learn how to play the trumpet first.
Exactly.
And then we're talking about taking to learn how to solo. You have to learn your scales. You have to learn articulations. You have to learn your arpeggios. You have to learn the basics of a trumpet. Then you have to learn harmony. That's a bit much for a little kid to handle. And if you can handle it, you're a genius or you're a very gifted musician. So I saw the difference between jazz and other forms of music. I saw that jazz took it took a musician to be a jazz artist. You didn't have to be a musician to play R&B. And I'm not knocking the music because it's a party music, it's a good time music. But you probably know yourself, you can get an electric bass and play the current sound today.
what was it? What type of preparation did you do to really, so you could represent the music right?
Well, I just love music, right? And I've been listening to these records since I was a kid, so I want to play these solos. And I had been studying trumpet. Let's say I started studying when I was 9 or 10 years old. And by the time I was 11 and 12, I could play my scales and I could play things, but I couldn't solo like Lee Morgan, you know?
Yeah.
And I couldn't play all that intricate stuff Miles Davis was playing. And I tried, so I had to figure out what it was. So that brought me back to studying the trumpet more. That's what you had to do. You had to really bear down and understand the full mechanics of the instrument. Then I had to study harmony because they were soloing over the changes of the tune or the harmonic structure of whatever tune they're playing, be it their own original composition or be it a tune that was a Broadway tune. Whatever the tune was, they were soloing over this harmonic structure. So I had to learn harmony. Then I had to have enough dexterity to try to, well, after you learn harmony, you got to learn how to make the harmony work. You have to have enough dexterity to make your ideas, fit the harmony. Then you have to have ideas. See, so I sat and listened to records all night, trying to understand how they did it, and I had to practice. And it wasn't like I had to; it was just love. I never had a problem practicing.
That's what that was, not to cut you off, but that's one thing I was going to ask you. While going through all this, in the back of your mind, were you saying, well, is this really worth it?
I never had a problem practicing, man. And I'll tell you, I wanted it very bad because I just loved music, and I did things, I boxed, because my father did. And I played basketball with my friends, I did all that stuff. But I took the trumpet very serious at 11 years old, and I just practiced. And one day my father told me that Coltrane practiced for 8 hours a day. That's a hard thing to do. And I couldn't believe it. I always fantasized about it, but I couldn't believe it really could be done. And one day I just said to myself, I'm going to try to practice 8 hours a day, which is a very good discipline. And I took a clock. I never forgot. Well, my father was messing with me a lot, too. He said, man, you got to practice like Coltrane. If you ain't, you're not serious. So I went up in my room. I took a clock. And I placed it right there, and I practiced my etudes. And 1 hour went past. That was hard. Then I practiced the second hour. I sat there and just watched hours go by, and my will was telling me to stop. And I said, no, I'm not going to stop. Even if I'm just going to buzz a note. I would stop, to take breaths, or, if you play consistently for 8 hours, your lips hurt. So I would allow myself 5 or 10 minute breaks. But every time my strength renewed, I picked it up, even if just to blow a scale. After the third hour, it became easy. All of a sudden, the clock started going like this. Boom, boom.
Is that right?
And I made 8 hours. I was so proud of myself, man. And then it became easy. It became easy just to wake up in the morning, go straight down to my basement. My grandmother called that my studio. And I just start practicing. Next thing you know, it start at 9 o'clock. Next thing you know, it's about 3 in the afternoon. I'd take a break in between. Maybe to go get a hoagie or go get a soda. I'd take a half-hour break. And next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock. So, the Three Stooges is on. That's how I was modeling my, how I patterned my thing. 5 o'clock, man, I said, wow, I did, and that became a natural thing. And I also had other things that helped me too. They had a great radio station, WRTI, played jazz all day. It was Temple University, so I turned the music down soft and keep my ear cocked, but keep my discipline. And all of a sudden, I was doing that every day. And it was fun.
Interesting that you talk about WRTI. My cousin-in-law is the program director for the jazz station at WRTI.
Great radio station. Great.
I was talking to him, it's been a little while ago, but I just found out that he's a program director there.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's interesting. Yeah. So let's move on. My name is James Graves. This is Night Journey. After hours and hours of practice, when did you feel that you were ready to make a stand in with the music you chose as jazz?
Well, like I said, when you love the music, you just want to do it. So often, all through it, I was trying to organize bands or get my friends interested in the music so we could jam. And when you're young, you don't know how you sound, So I just kept trying, and I actually played a gig for the first time in my life when I was 16. And it was my own gig, but I played it, and all the licks that I had learned, I got up there and tried to play. And then all of a sudden, I was working locally. I had moved to Washington, D.C. to go to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. And I started working locally there. And I met some good young musicians that was interested too. A guy named Eric Allen played drums, great drummer. Clarence C., who was one of my best friends, he wound up being on Wynton Marsalis' first record. And Jerry Allen I met in Washington, Greg Osby and Gary Thomas. So we all, we, in different variations, we just played a lot and tried to make local gigs. And the thing that really turned my playing around, was my idol, Miles Davis, period. Mm-hmm. That was my idol. I just loved Miles Davis. Then I heard Clifford Brown, and Clifford became my idol. And I didn't want to believe that he was better than Miles, but then I said, Clifford Brown is something else. But then, not recently, after you go through your periods of loving all these guys, and Dizzy Gillespie, Dizzy was always above everybody to me. He was like the king. But then I heard Miles, and I realized how much of a genius Miles was. Miles really took the trumpet further than even Clifford did. People don't realize that. So I going through all my simulations of these artists, listening to Lee, listening to Booker Little, and trying to emulate all these cats. And Woody Shaw came in town one day, and I started listening to Woody now, and I had learned some of Woody's things, and I was about 16 years old, and Woody says to me, he says, "Hey, you're the young trumpet player I'm hearing about. Well, look, you want to come sit in with me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I didn't care. So he called me up, and we played Green Dolphin Street, and Woody was so nice, man. He didn't take a great solo. He just eased up for me so I wouldn't embarrass myself. But what he didn't know was that I had studied all his solos. So I came behind him, I played all his licks. And Woody looked at me, and I think it kind of threw him, so he never got back his composure, So he just kind of left it like that, and we became friends behind that. So a year later, Woody remembered that, and he played in Washington, D.C. again, and he said, Wallace Roney from the bandstand. "Where's Wallace Roney? I'm looking for Wallace Roney. Where is he?" And I said, "Here I am." So he called me on the bandstand, and he said, "Let's play To Kill a Brick." I said, "Okay." And he counted off 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And after he played the melody, he left the bandstand. I got it, and I said, "Boop, boop, boop." Boy, I was shocked, man. And then after I couldn't play nothing on it to him, he came behind me and said, and then him and Victor Lewis trade fours. I just dropped my head. So that taught me that whatever shortcomings I had, I was going to have to deal with them. So I went up to my room. I don't think I came out of the house. Well, if I did, just to walk around the block, I didn't do nothing, man. I just sat and I said, I want to be as good as that or better, And when I say better, I don't mean better that I'm ever going to be better than Woody Shaw. I mean, I just want to, whatever I'm hearing that can be my thing, I want to do. So I went up in my room and I practiced my articulation with a metronome perfect. I said, Clifford Brown articulates like this. I'm practice that. Bam, 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 bam. And until I got it as, good. Then I said, and Miles does this, and Miles plays like this. And I went to the piano, and I figured out these harmonies. Then I figured out I'm still trying to figure out what the heck Miles Davis is coming from. But anyway, I took it very seriously, and I figured, man, if I'm going to deal with these cats, man, this is what I'm going to have. I'm going to have to deal with that.
Exactly.
And I got that was what happened. And then I played with Art Blakey. And after that, it led to me auditioning for Art's band, and I got the gig.
How was it? Let's talk about being a jazz messenger. I
Okay.
mean, damn, we're talking about
Yeah.
legends that came out of that band. Now, for you to be able to be one of the jazz messengers, how did it feel?
Man, Art Blakey, I never, well, that's one of the cats I had a lot of fun with. We got to be real close. And Art, how you put it? Well, I loved Art because I had all the records with Lee and with Clifford and with Freddie Hubbard. And he knew I liked that, and the records he made with Miles. And he just, it felt great, man. I don't know how else to say it. It just felt great, man.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever think that you would be a jazz messenger?
Yeah, no, I was always hoping to. My dream, actually, the cat I really wanted to play with more than any cat. Like, drummers want to play with Miles Davis. I wanted to play with Tony Williams. But Tony wasn't playing music that had a trumpet. So my second dream was to play with Art Blakey. Those were my two dreams, because Art had Clifford and Art had Lee. So I met Art Blakey. The first jazz concert I ever saw was in Philadelphia called Quaker City Jazz Festival. And Miles Davis was on it. My idol, man. I was in heaven. And then Weather Report, when they were playing Straight Ahead, was on it. And the Giants of Jazz with Dizzy, Monk. I think it was one of Monk's last concerts. Sonny Stitt. Curtis Fuller took Kyle Whitney's place, and Larry Ridley instead of Al McKibben, and Art Blakey. And Art tore the thing up, man. I was a kid, and I had listened to him on records, and I was just seeing him just messed me up. He stole the show from everybody, man. And when he got through, I went back there to speak to Art. My father took me back there. My father said, he's a trumpet player. Art said, yeah, he's going to be in my band one day. And Art loves to tell that story.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I always was looking forward to that moment, to play with Art.
And so then it actually happened.
It happened, man, and he called me, and I ran up and down the house like a kid, man. I didn't know how to act.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, it was great.
How long did you play with Art?
I first played with Art. It was in 3 stages, you could say. First time I played with him was with a big band. I took Valerie Parnamara's place, but Wynton Marsalis was Art Blakey's new trumpet player. But Art was going to use 2 trumpets. So I took Valerie's place, and I became the other trumpet player. But it was really Wynton's gig. So then a year later, Wynton went to play with Herbie Hancock. And I didn't know what Art was going to do, man. I said, well, he should let me do the gig. That's what I'm thinking. So I saw he was playing in the Bottom Line in New York. And I sold everything I had. I sold my best trumpet. I was in school at this point. I sold my TV. I sold everything to go to New York and play with Art Blakey. And I went up there, and he had an audition, and I didn't know he was going to audition. My intention was just to go up there and sit in, but I didn't know he was holding auditions. I went up there. Art saw me. He said, where's your horn? I said, well, I'm going to bring it the next day. He said, yeah, come on and play. I want you to play. So I felt good that he asked me. Got up there. There's 2 other trumpet players there auditioning. They knew all the music. They had their suits on. I didn't even have a suit on. But when it was over, I had the gig, and I was so happy, man. I called my father up from the payphone, man. I said, man, Dad, I got the gig with Art. So now I'm the trumpet player with Art. And I did the gig up until from, was it May of 81 till November of 81. Off and on at that point. Then Wynton Marsalis came back because he needed a little time to reform his group. So one thing led to another, and then being in New York, I started working with a whole bunch of other cats. I started working with Chico Freeman and McCoy Tyner, and I got real lucky. I got busy for a minute. Then it became a real slow period where I didn't do nothing. Then in 1985, Tony Williams was putting together a record date, and they asked me to do it. And that was my dream, because Tony was, Tony and Miles Davis and all that stuff. And plus, I even liked some of his fusion stuff he was doing.
Tony had a different style of really blending jazz and fusion together compared to how.
Yeah, well, he was the original. Well, he likes to call it jazz rock. He said he doesn't like the word fusion, but he was the original jazz rock drummer, and his stuff made sense to me because he played with a jazz drummer's sensibility, even though he's playing rock like a rock drummer. I could hear, he was doing little intricate things that rock drummers wouldn't do, or that funk drummers wouldn't do. And he would take these incredible. So I liked his music all along. So he called me to do his record date. I was thrilled. And then after we did the record date, a couple months later, he said he was putting together a band and would I be interested in doing it? I said, yeah. And then Art Blakey called me again. And I couldn't tell Art no.
Yeah.
So I did both gigs for him for a while. But it came to a point that I just couldn't do both. I had to make a decision because I just felt bad, standing up Art all like that. So I went with Tony because Tony's music to me was more intricate, and it offered me more chance to grow and contribute my own voice to this music.
My name is James Graves. You are listening to Night Journey, and we're visiting with a very fine trumpeter and having a very good conversation. It's real interesting just listening how people develop, how that networking works. The question I want to ask you is, during your whole developmental period, and were you ready to accept maybe wouldn't make it big time, if you want to use that, and you were maybe would had to settle for a 9 to 5 and just really played for pleasure more so than trying to really make it a life thing? Were you prepared mentally for that to happen?
You know, I never thought like that. And this is just speaking for me, I believe that if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. I mean, or you don't stop your goals. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You just you put all your energy and you put all your heart in it, put your soul in it, and the obstacles. There's a lot of obstacles. People. It's not a perfect world. People try to block you out of things. People try to stop you from doing things. But if you really want it, you find a way. And then on top of that, I play music not to be a star per se. I want people to like me, and I want people to hear what I'm playing. So if that stardom comes with that, that's cool. But I ultimately play music because I love music, and I feel an artistic need to express myself. So, that's why I do it, and I'm going to do that. Nothing's going to, only God's going to stop me from doing that if
Right.
He wants, if it's so big.
What is Wallace Roney's music trying to say?
What my music is trying to say is, I want to keep going forward. I just want to keep the music going forward. I don't want to be like in a standstill or in an era. I want to try to be as progressive. I look at it like art. I really take it serious, and I want to take all my energies to try to not jive the people. Just try to when they hear me, they're gonna hear the most. They hear my most honest expression, and I'm going to try to always push ahead, not forget what's behind me, and I'm always going to use what was before me, or my influences and whatever I do. But I'm trying to push ahead, you know.
Hmm.
And if I don't do it, it's not because I'm not trying, but if you keep trying, you'll finally forge ahead, you know. That's what my music should say to people. I mean, I'm fortunate. I've got the chance to play with all the greatest drummers that I could possibly play with. I played with Art. I played with Philly Joe. I played with Billy Higgins. I played with Tony. Tony's a genius. And I played with Elvin. Elvin, you know, all of these guys are geniuses, you know. And this music, jazz, Afro American music, comes from African tradition, which is drum oriented anyway.
Exactly.
So I'm playing with the kings, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're the kings, and you know, trumpet and drums just lock. So that goes all the way back to Africa, man. Trumpet and drums, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fortunate to be able to play with the trendsetters in the music, you know.
What does jazz mean to Wallace Roney?
What jazz means to me, um, I hope this doesn't make people mad, but I'll just give you my honest.
Yeah, we just want your opinion. What is?
It's artistic music that come from expression from Black Americans, Africans that were brought over to America, and this was their creative outlet, you know, and they were great enough. This was their way to cry out for things, or this was their way to express joy. This is our music, you know, and everybody can enjoy it, but it's our expression, and you know, and this is our way of reflecting what waterfalls look like, or what a good time means, or what outer space could look like. This is just our expression. That's what jazz means to me.
One question, well, many questions that's running through my mind. When you're creating, when you're composing, what environment or what motivates you as far as composing a song?
Ooh, a lot of things. You know, it could be anything. It could be something I heard, a phrase I played, harmonies that I'm working on, something I saw. You know, um, music is a reflection of life. So, you know, it's whatever you taste, whatever you encounter. That's how this music became anyway, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like we said, we came off slave ships and stuff, and we needed to express our sorrows or our joys, whatever it was. The sorrows came through blueses, you know, and the joys came through the happier moments. And
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
meld them together and you got jazz.
What's in the future for you?
Oh man, I'm just keep trying to go forward, man, and I hope that you know, people dig the music and dig me enough. They give me a chance to keep on, you know, to do the same things that has been done throughout history. You know, just getting a chance to play, and I hope everybody has an open mind enough to listen what everybody has to say on the music, not just one person. You know, and hear his expression or this person's expression or her expression, whoever it is. And for me, the future, I just want to keep playing, man. You know.
I heard that. Wallace Roney, thank you so much,
Oh,
man.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's nice meeting you, and I hope that this can be the beginning of a good friendship.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
And continued success to you. My name is James Graves, and you have been listening to Night Journey.